Standring, guitar man, smooth jazz, hip sway all day, and Englishman in LA. Soul jazz, soul express, smooth grooves, groovalicious. Chris Standring, Chris Standring.
Yeah, man.
Chris Standring theme. Everybody gets one. You have to sit through that one. So yeah, well, thanks for doing it, Chris. Anybody who's watching, Chris is a huge star on the smooth jazz scene. He's a great player. He's got a lot of albums out, and he really knows what he's doing. And he's another thing that's quite a rare breed, where he's a British guy who's actually managed to really make his mark in America and be embraced in the musical scene over there. So, Chris, thanks for joining us. And
Of course, Andy.
yeah,
It's really great to see you, man.
yeah, nice to see you too. I suppose
Yeah,
we should tell everybody we were at college together.
that's right. That's
So
right.
we were mates at college, so we've known each other a very long time, and I've sort of seen Chris's ascent.
Well, I've seen yours too.
Yeah,
I've seen yours too. Yeah, very different trajectories,
very
didn't
much
we?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We both started out playing classical guitar, and you stuck with that, and I gave it up pretty quick.
I stuck with it for
To,
a while. Yeah,
oh yeah, I mean, I never really stopped it, but you really focused on it,
yeah,
and I kind of went into the fusion thing pretty hardcore,
yeah.
and then of course I left for America, and you kind of, you weren't even a professional for a while, and then you really stepped into it and
Yeah, yeah,
came in hard, didn't you?
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And you've done amazing.
Well, I've had a career. Still
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah.
I mean, I have to say, you're the person who got me into jazz. I still remember, I just didn't get jazz. I remember
I
thinking
know. I
jazz
remember.
didn't
I
have
remember.
the emotional breadth of classical music, because I was so deep
Yeah,
into classical music, and you were the one who
yeah.
sort of walked me through it. And I think Matheny was the entry point, and after that, it's like, oh, I
That's
get it.
right.
And then Wes
That's right.
Montgomery, I started having lessons with Dave Cliff, and that,
Yeah,
I was in then. I was into it then.
yeah.
But thank you, man, because my whole life comes from that
Mm.
change of appreciation for that kind of
Well,
music.
I'm glad I can be responsible for your career and success.
Yeah, you're not on a
I'll take all
percentage. Too
credit.
many ideas, but yeah. But thank you, man. I mean, that's a real turning point, and
Yeah.
you're a great advocate for it. I mean, I remember how hard you worked at running a band, apart from playing.
Oh,
Obviously, playing
yeah,
takes enough time, but you did that
yeah.
on top of really getting your playing happening.
Well, I got a quick story to tell you if you
Yeah,
want about that very thing. Before I went to the LCM with you, I spent a year in California, hanging out at places like the Baked Potato, and I would see bands like the Yellow Jackets and Larry Carlton and all these incredible bands. And they were all kids, and I was really a kid. I was like 20 years old. And one day I went to see Larry Carlton, and I was sitting in the back row, and right behind me was Robben Ford, and I had just seen him with the Yellow Jackets the week before. He's like, I don't know, 28 years old or something. And so I thought, oh, I've got to talk to him. I'm such a fan already. And so we got chatting, and he told me about the time he spent with George Harrison in Henley, and I went to school in Henley, so we had that little conversation. And then I said to him, I'm going back to London to do 3 years at a music college, but I really want to end up being a player like you and Larry. What advice do you have for me? And he said to me, I think if you go back to London and you start a band and you call all the best players in London, or your favorite players even, get them to come and play with you, then if you can play, people will recognize that, and you'll start to work as well. Well, it's really interesting because I took that exact advice. I mean, that's why I started my band, because he told me to, basically.
wow.
And yeah, I mean, I haven't told anybody that. I mean, that was really the reason. And but the interesting thing is, I did start to work a bit. I was never like a first call session guy. I was too young to do that, really. But I did do a lot of gigs with my band, and everybody in London played with the band, you know,
Yeah.
even in its kind of infantile status. But I thought the interesting thing is Robben Ford went on to be an artist. He didn't, you know, he did a limited amount of sessions, then went on. And that's exactly what happened to me. It's like people wanted to play in my band. They weren't calling to hire me. They were calling to come and play in my band.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, that was really bad advice from Robben in a way, because I ended up like him, you know what I mean, doing the artist thing. But I mean, of course, that's what we were both supposed to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's actually fine. I mean, I'm thankful in a way, but I don't think I would have done it that way if I'd gone again, you know.
Well, I think you've probably had a much more varied career, and I think you must have had a more satisfying experience being a musician than just doing the sort of jobbing thing. You know, that can get pretty.
Well, I certainly did enough of that. Certainly when I was in London, you know. But I found myself, when I came to LA, I thought I would do the same thing. I thought I would really be a studio guitar player or a touring guitar player and play on all these records that I'd been poring over, you know. Yeah. And I found myself, after a while, putting a band together and playing with all these incredible players in the beginning, that when I did get called to do a little jingle, I sort of thought, am I the guy for this even? I wasn't always that great at it. I mean, I remember the last jingle session I did, one guy had me play over blow over some sequence, which is like a kind of a bluesy thing, I seem to remember, but with lots of changes. I couldn't get my head around it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, now I'd probably have a ball with it, but back then I couldn't get my head around it, and I sort of freaked out, and I thought, I'm never going to be called again, and I wasn't. I mean, I just wasn't that guy. I mean, they're you know, when you've got people like Mike Landau and George Deering and all these incredible players here doing that kind of work, Dean Parks, you know, it's like I wasn't really cut out for it in a way that I thought I was going to be cut out for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's all right. I found my place, and it all worked out. So I'm very happy. It's better.
It feels like a goal to me. If you can write music, create a context that's personal to you, and spend a lot of your time improvising, getting really inside music. If you can make a living, you know, make a life around it, that actually seems like the goal to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've done a lot of commercial stuff, and it can be hard, you know. I tell you what's wild. Robben Ford is doing a workshop for me at the college I teach at in a few weeks. I got to know him a little. I've never met him, but we've spoken a few times and bounced a few texts. It's really weird that you would mention him, because I'm going to rehearsal with him on Sunday, and it made me think of that band leader thing. He said the guys are coming at a certain time, and he's going to be there well in advance of them. I thought, I'm not surprised by that. There's another guy who really means business, and he's going to be there, going to get everything sorted.
Yeah, and by the way, I never met Robben since. You know, it was like 1980 was the last time I actually met him. You know,
right?
I always wanted to. I mean, I'm sure at some point I might, and I'd love to tell him this story personally and thank him. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I hear he's a great guy.
Yeah,
that's all I know.
Yeah, I mean, another really interesting player. It's interesting because I've got to play a few things with him in a few weeks' time. Just learning a few things. The way that his playing's evolved as well. Because most people's playing evolves. Some people don't. But I've been listening to a few of your things, preparing for this. It's like a definite evolution of your playing. It's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Robben's playing good, because I heard one of Robben's things recently, and he's gone back to that sort of freewheeling sort of jazz kind of thing that would have been very appropriate with Miles Davis.
Yeah, maybe he's come full circle.
Yeah, kind of thing. You know, wasn't obviously the blues thing is there, but it's interesting to see how people's playing evolves. So I'm going to jump to my last question on my list, which is, who are your influences? I know Pat Metheny, when we were young, was somebody you were really into, and I know Larry Carlton, somebody you're into, but who are the guys that you've checked out then? Or,
Okay, so
transcribed, studied, you know.
right at different stages of my life, it was different people. So my very first influence was a guy called Jan Ackerman.
Oh
Are
yeah,
you familiar
yeah. Focus.
with Focus?
Yeah.
And he was an extraordinary musician, obviously classically trained, which I totally associated with. But he was kind of a jazz guy, but not really a jazz guy. You know what I mean? He had chops and great time, and he would blow these amazing solos on these Focus albums, and he just blew me away. I thought, I don't know what this is, but I wanted to get into it. So I really got into him for a long time. And then Jeff Beck, when his Blow by Blow album came out, that was all I listened to probably for 3 years. And Wired after that, I was a massive Jeff Beck fan. Although you'd never know it if you listened to me. But I think in my earlier playing, it might have been a little bit more noticeable, you know, the influence. When I was playing with more of an overdrive sound, you know.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Larry Carlton came with that unbelievable album that out of the box is like blew everybody away.
Yeah.
And after that, I got into all the West Coast guys like Robben Ford and Steve Lukather and Rittenauer too, a little bit. More his compositions than him, but he's great too. Yeah. And who was it after that? It was, I came over here, and Joe passed to a point, you know, although I was never really into his tone when he played fingerstyle. I mean, a phenomenal musician. I loved an album of his called For Django. I don't know if you know that record.
I don't know that well. No, I know a lot of the others, but I don't particularly know.
Well, that was a life changer for me, for Django. And I remember John Etheridge talking about that when I was in London, and it took me another 10 years to listen to it. And I mean, I must have worn the damn grooves out of that record. It's incredible. And it's because he's still playing with a pick, and his time is unbelievable. Yeah. So I got into Joe Pass a little bit later, but then it was obviously Pat Metheny from a writing standpoint as much as a playing standpoint. I mean, I've ripped off every compositional tool he's ever used, you know. It's in some form for me, you know what I mean? Yeah. And of course his playing was incredible, super unique. But then it was Pat Martino, and I listened to him almost exclusively for a number of years. Right, I mean, I actually got to know him quite well, a little bit. I wouldn't say quite well. I went to have a lesson with him in Philadelphia, and then he came to my show that night because I was over there doing the show, and we stayed in touch a little bit. I mean, he changed my life. Actually, that lesson changed my life,
right?
Because he kind of gave me permission to be a jazz guitar player, if that makes any sense to you. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think a lot of people, especially people who come out of London from the studio world, you've got to kind of keep it under wraps a little bit that you're a jazz guy, because at the time, certainly in the 80s, there were a lot of people, you know, going on the road with pop bands, and everybody wanted that grand a week, you know. So it was kind of infra dig, if you will, to be a jazz guy, and you know, we all collected instruments, Strats and Tellys and acoustics, so we didn't actually have to just do the jazz thing, you know. Right. So when I had that lesson with Pat, and he literally just picked up the guitar and just roared through some bebop changes, I thought, this is all he's ever done, and he's just with it. He's with it. He's comfortable in his own skin. What am I doing trying to make sense of whether I should be doing this or not, you know? So from that day forward, I ditched the Strats. I like everything else was secondary, and I just picked up my jazz guitar and I went, this is who you are, own it, be comfortable with it, and be proud of it. And that's actually what I got from that lesson with Pat. It wasn't how to play on A altered, you know, which I thought it would be, you know what I mean? It was just looking at him going, I want to be you. Yeah.
I did an interview with him once, and I had an Ibanez 175 rather. And I think I had 12s on it. I remember him saying, "Oh man, I couldn't do one tune on this. I'd no top string for you."
Yeah, he likes telephone cable wire.
Oh yeah. And when you think how he plays, you know, I remember that version of Oleo on a 12 string. So, ouch.
Mm,
Wow. Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. I mean, what a player. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah,
absolutely amazing.
yeah. But also since Pat, I got into a lot of the New York guys.
Mm.
I mean, some of them are not even widely known. There's a guy called Largy Lund. Are you familiar with
I've heard
him?
the name, but I don't know his stuff.
Yeah, he's taken harmony to such a degree at his young years. I mean, it's just incredible what he's done.
Yeah.
You know, Adam Rogers. I like, uh, and there's a new guy called Matteo Mancuso who's just flooring everybody with his technique and his vibe. So I like to keep up. You know, I'm not necessarily wanting to go down those roads, but I'm always intrigued to see what I can pull from somebody else. You know.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. You're talking about ditching the strats, I think, because a lot of the grooves rather on your own stuff. There's some really great classic funk rhythm guitar. So you must be using a Strat or similar. Play those.
Actually, there's two. It's either a Strat or a Telly,
Right.
like in the back pickup where you get that scratchy sound. You know,
Do
it's
you
one of the
roll the
two.
treble off to do that, or do you just leave it as it is?
I probably should.
No, it sounds amazing. That's what you're doing. It just sounds killer.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean,
that's
if
how you
it's when I mix it, if it's too bright, I'll roll it off. But I tend to just play. I mean, I just pick it up and quickly I want to get to the part. So I'm not really that concerned of as to whether I'm going to meticulously EQ it right or not, because I know I can do it later. I just want to get the vibe. Now, if it feels too bright, I mean, I might roll it off. It just really depends what the track is. You know what I mean? I've just got to use my ears, really.
Yeah. I mean, I remember years ago you came around and you listened to I can't even remember what it was you listened to, something I'd done. And you've got a really fine sense of production, but EQ I'm thinking of, really sensitive to that. You really know what you're doing with it. And the records sound like that. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with that stuff, but I remember you've got a really fine appreciation of that stuff. Where did that come from? At what point did you start thinking you were getting somewhere with an understanding of that EQ, engineering, production kind of stuff? I think just
doing it. I partnered with this guy Rodney Lee for many years because he had a studio, and it made sense for us to work together. And he could do that because he was so good at it, and we were a fantastic writing team too. We really worked well together. But then, of course, I got a house and I wanted to do a little bit myself, so I didn't have to rely on other people to, for their time and wait 2 weeks to get into a room, which was ridiculous, which is why everybody puts a studio together. And I did the same thing. And I was pretty primitive in the beginning, but I think I had a bit of a knack for arranging. I've always had a good sense of arrangement, which comes from my London days in my band, like scoring horns and things like that.
Yeah.
And also classical guitar. When you're dealing with contrapuntal lines, you've got to hear things.
Yeah.
It's not just a chord of G. Yeah. If you're playing a Bach piece, as you well know, you've got to be aware of individual lines. So you've got to hear the individual line, which is a really good preface to listening to a mix. You've got to hear individual parts and see what you need to bring out and what not to.
Yeah.
And just time, just doing it. My first one was not great, but it was good enough to sit into my catalog without me feeling ashamed. But I mean, I really, I thought, if I'm going to do this, I've got to step this up. This needs to be better than this, And I feel like I've got a handle on it now.
Oh,
I don't always know the technical sides of things. Like when people get really technical, I don't always know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, I know the EQ spectrum and I know about compression and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's not much more than that, with a little understanding reverb and pre-delays and tail lengths.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And low end. I mean, that after that, it's ears at the end of the day. That's the basis of it, and then you just got to fine tune it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that brings me to another thing. How did you learn the discipline of scoring for horns then? What did you check out for that stuff?
Well, I did the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. Did you ever do that
Yeah, I did. I did for a long
in
time.
London?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, did you? Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I did it for a couple of years, and I wrote a couple of pieces for it.
Right.
And of course, you know, I had my band in London, and I was literally, I mean, I was just making it up as I went along. You know, I was listening to all this sort of soul funk music from over here, like the Crusaders, and they had horns. And I thought, well, how hard is that to do?
Yeah.
You know. But basically, it was just hearing the part, which I got quite good at,
Yeah.
and then understanding a little bit of basic transposition, so you could write it out.
Yeah.
And I got that wrong a lot too. I mean, I remember I'm on gigs, you know, trumpet players saying to me, "Look at Chris parts." Yeah, I remember those days, but you know, you got to learn. I mean, you got to learn on the spot. I mean, how else are you going to really do it?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, look at back in Mozart and Beethoven's days. You know, when they were writing for orchestra, they didn't have synths to preview sounds before they went in to play it live. They had to, whatever they heard was what they were going to get back. You know, so that was. I mean, and so just by doing it and going, okay, I didn't like the way that sounded. Let's not write that chord. You know what I mean? Or let's not voice it like that. You know, let's put the third at the top. I don't know, whatever.
But that's interesting. You refer to the guitar because that does make sense, doesn't it? Because voicing is so important on the guitar because the resources are so, the range of any area of the guitar is so small. You do have to have quite a refined sense of voicing, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to get to a somewhat advanced level, I mean, if you want to sing melodies over chords, I mean, that's one thing. But I always wanted to do a bit more than that.
Yeah.
So, you know, counterpoint was, and voicing. I mean, I learned when I did my orchestral jazz album, I really got into orchestrating strings. Although I didn't actually end up doing it in the end, but I sent my pieces to Jeff Gascoigne, who did end up doing it. And that was, I mean, again, that's just I'm in heaven doing that. You know, it's all part of it to me. Just harmony, isn't it?
Yeah. There was one thing. That's not the record that's got How Insensitive on it, is it?
Yeah.
Because I thought that was really interesting, that Dave Grusin vibe and the strings on that. That record's just great. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That's a labor of love.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's lovely. The guitar play, the tone, the improvisation. It's just classy.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of that record. And hats off to Jeff Gascoigne, who did a fantastic job of the strings. You know, he really labored over it. Yeah, really, really lovely. Of course, we had some great players on it too. You know.
Where did you record that then? In London?
The strings were recorded at Abbey Road Studio 2.
Right.
And the rhythm section, I recorded my guitars here. This was during the COVID, so we couldn't really do much.
Yeah.
And Peter Erskine recorded his drum parts at his studio.
Right.
I had Harvey Mason and Derek Oles. I booked a studio. They recorded their parts there. Randy Brecker recorded his trumpet parts at his house and emailed back to me. And Catherine Shaw came over to my studio to record the vocal. And I think Dave Carasoni, he replaced a drum part that I wasn't crazy about, and he did that at his house.
Right.
I think that's everybody on that record. Jeff played a couple of bass parts, and is that it? 2 bass players, Derek and Jeff. I'm missing somebody. Oh, Chuck Berghofer.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Who played the original bass part on Nancy Sinatra's "These Boots Are Made for Walking."
Oh yeah.
He was 85, and he came into my studio here, and he was just like burning. And that solo he played on Night and Day was like right out of 1953, man.
Oh, fantastic.
No, you couldn't get that if you hadn't have had Chuck or somebody of that ilk play that. Nobody plays like that anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Amazing. That's a great record. It's beautiful. It sounds really organic. If you told me that had been played with everybody in the same room, I think it sounds like it. I approached the mix
like I wanted everybody in the room.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I really took a bit of time mixing that. I mean, I even put a little bit of reverb on the bass, you know what I mean, which you don't normally do, just to put everybody in a space and feel like it's actually all at Abbey Road, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Not an easy thing to do. A trio record is actually a really hard thing to mix because there's nothing in the middle. You know, basically, if you turn the drums down a little bit, suddenly the bass is screaming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that, because it's so subtle.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite a hard thing to do. And of course, the strings provide the middle, so that once they sat in the mix, it made it a lot easier. But I dropped them later.
So in mixing that, did you find sort of not quite a template, but did you settle on a kind of way of finding levels and EQing everything, or did every track need, because you use a lot of different people in a lot of different situations, did you have to attack every track differently, do you think?
Well, you know, every musician has their own sort of unique thing, you know what I mean, that they do, that and their sound, and you can't really put a finger on it, but essentially I'm doing the same things to, you know, I'm trying to find that sweet spot in the bass, you know what I mean, making sure there's no rumble. The drums have got to be, I mean, you can't, the kick, you don't want too much of a boingy kick because it's just going to saturate the whole thing, you know. I mean, I said to Peter, I said, you know, have you got a kick that's not too boingy? So he said, yeah, I've got that. so we did that. The strings, basically, I would mute everything and then just listen to the strings and balance the strings. So once you've got the string template sound, that's pretty much it for every track.
Right.
I mean, there'll be some subtle things. I might want to bring the cellos up, for instance, something like that.
Yeah.
But mostly once you've got the cello, the string sound set, you can create a template and just bring it in for every track.
Right. I mean, on something, because it sounds great, that album. Are there any instruments in that mix that you didn't apply some sort of EQ process into? Did you put an EQ plugin with pretty much everything to your recollection?
Well, there's not much with my guitar. My guitar is pretty much that with a little bit of reverb on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably high passed it just a little bit. I will have done, but I think, but I seem to remember Peter's drums being pretty easy to mix. It was, you know, I don't know if he did that before he sent it to me. I don't think he would have done it. I mean, I think they were pretty raw, but they just sounded really nice, you know. Yeah.
Well, he's been doing it a long time, and he's doing
That's right. He's got no excuse, has he?
No, he's got no excuse at all. I mean, just the sound he gets from the drums is so. Yeah. I tell you what, I'm just looking here. I love that version of Giant Steps. Your reinvention of Giant Steps. I love it. It's like,
which one? The one on Soul Express?
Like, it's on the same one as How Insensitive, I think.
No, it's not.
It's like the last track on a CD. It was definitely the last track.
Oh no! Okay, I know what you're talking about. I recorded an album called Soul Express.
That's it, I think. Yeah.
And it's the last track on the album.
Right, that version.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, it's most of it's in 3/4. Well, actually, I think I played I can't remember, half of it's in 3/4, isn't it?
It's really I was listening, thinking, what's he doing? It sounds amazing. I've written here, really interesting, a Bond film version. I've written here. It's like, it's really, it's lovely.
Yeah,
that was very bold, but just nice. I mean, it's not just clever. It's like that. It's really lovely. It's great.
I just thought, you know, there's no point me just recording Giant Steps. I mean, why do I need to do that? You know, I mean, there's a million to do it. That's right. So if you're going to do it, you kind of got to put a spin on it.
Yeah.
And I remember I did this record with Rodney Lee. It was actually the last one we did together all the way through. Yeah. And I had this idea that I would play the melody, and then for the second part of the changes, it would be in 3/4. And then he put this kind of chill sort of drum and bass thing at the beginning and the end of each section. And then I just thought, well, if I'm going to play the melody like that, I should blow on the changes like that, which actually was quite challenging because giant steps is hard enough.
Yeah.
You know, but I did a bit of work on it, and I, threw some licks on it. It was all right. I'm quite proud of that. I think I'd probably play it a little differently now if I was to do it again. Just what I played on the solo.
Right.
But it's all right,
You're always going to think that, though, don't you think?
Yeah.
And also,
it's
classic that, like, as classic as that, rather. I mean, you're probably there's probably no chance you're going to listen to it and think, oh, I could have done this, could have done that.
Yeah.
You'll always find other things you might want to get in there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, how do you see the evolution of your playing then? If you had to describe how it's changed, it's definitely I couldn't describe it, but it's. I mean, everybody matures, but it seems more and more personal somehow. How would you describe it?
I feel like it's more personal. It's really it's interesting you say that, because when I recorded my first album, I was pretty much like a soul blues guitar player, playing on some cool changes that Rodney wrote. You know what I mean? And I mean, I definitely had a style. I mean, you can definitely tell it's me.
Yeah.
But I think I started to approach things a little bit differently. I wanted more space as I got older. I wanted less clutter.
Right.
So, and I noticed that when Rodney was producing with me, he would be less concerned about my voice really cutting through and being focused, you know what I mean, and being present. He was much more concerned about the vibe and the groove, and being able to nod your head. And I totally know where he's coming from, but after a few records, it was more interesting to me to work on that space that I could sit within, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so it was more of a question of me writing slightly differently too. So more spacious harmony, sometimes more sophisticated harmony, but not so cluttered. And I wanted to be able to play a very simple line and let it breathe. You know what I mean? Things like that. So, and I got a bit more into the sort of arpeggio thing, like, and I can tell you, I can show you.
Great.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I used to play more like, more kind of bluesy. But now if I was going to play over a G minor chord, I might think more like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It would be more like, and also more tension notes, things like this. I would do a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessary. It was less smooth jazz, basically. I was just trying to do something a little bit more. I mean, personal is a really good way to think of it. And it's actually hard to explain because it's unexplainable. You just kind of grow, and you have a taste for doing slightly different things, and you try things, and suddenly, my melodies now quite often sound like that, where these tension against two strings, and rather than just playing a scale, you can play two notes together very classically in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just get that tension, and it's just, I don't know, it just takes my ear to a different place, and I get very bored of playing the same things over and over again. So I want to force myself to try new things all the time, And very often it's a matter of going back to fundamentals, you know, Dorian scale, but not necessarily just the scale, but do it in chords. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so you get this kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, those kinds of things that I'm really interested in those sort of clashes, but I want it to be presented in a very listenable way without it being self-indulgent and look what I can do. I'm never interested in trying to be clever.
Right.
I want to put it into a really musical context, so somebody who doesn't understand anything about music can still get it. And that's quite a challenge, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. But you nailed that. Just listening to you explain your approach there, it definitely seems like an approach that comes from doing it.
Yeah.
This is your living. This is what you do with your life and
Yeah.
work, and that shows because it's a very different approach to a pure academic learning approach. What I mean by that, a lot of people gather concepts, but it's more about, it seems to me, more about the doing. You can have loads of concepts, but if they don't get used, and if they don't get integrated, and if they don't really work with all the other things in there, that's
Right.
a blind alley, and it can be a very academic and
No, I mean, I know what you're saying. The fact that I have this opportunity to get up in the morning and say, what do I want to do today? What do I want to work on? Or what song do I want to write? What kind of piece of music do I want to attempt to do? I mean, I totally understand. I mean, these are gold-plated problems, you know, that I face in the morning. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm extremely grateful. You know, if you're a jobbing musician, you don't get those opportunities. You can work on those things, but you're absolutely right. When do you get the opportunity to try them out and you know, move it all forward?
That's right. And that's where you really sharpen your impulses. You must feel that. You must feel it in your approach to the guitar and writing. Your reflexes are going to be much quicker than somebody who's just studying concepts when they get the time to do it. As you say, a lot of people who are pro guitar players don't have a lot of time to work. You're really working it.
Yeah.
Under the pressure of doing gigs, committing to recordings, it's a different level of focus, and that's where you're really, really working on what you do, what you know. It's not a concept. It's not a foreign concept from outside. You're in it, and that shows. You can't cheat that really. You're either doing it or you're not, and it shows. It's
Yeah.
You know, I've really enjoyed doing a bit of research on this stuff. It's like these records sound great, and
Thanks, man.
The place that you find it does make sense. Exactly what you're saying is, it's not that kind of thing where check this out. It might be a theoretical approach. There's plenty of detail in what you do. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But it's like you're making music. It's complicated music. Some of it's very complicated music, but you are making music to give people as a gift, rather something which is almost like a musical equivalent of athleticism. It's not that. You know, you're making a record to be listened to, not something.
Yeah, well,
a calling card.
And I'm really interested in the listenableness of a record. You know, because you know, I'll buy a record by a great guitar player or saxophone player. You know, because I know it's going to be amazing, and they're amazing. But the question is, how many times am I going to actually listen to it?
Yeah, right.
And you know, I don't want to make those kind of records. And I actually thought about this a long time ago. It's like, you know, I thought, what is my brand? What musically am I trying to say? Well, first of all, if you go to an Alan Holdsworth concert when he was alive, who do you see in the audience? Was my first question, right? You know, all guys, not one girl or woman there, and rightly so in a way. And who were the guys? They were all music students. They were all guitar players. Well, I thought, first of all, I don't want my audience to be music students. I'd like some girls in my audience, right? I want 50-50. I want it to be, something that, a couple could come along to, you know what I mean, and then enjoy. So, so I thought, well, what kind of, what is the groove that people like, that women like, for instance? When it's more of a backbeat, it's like, it's the on the one kind of groove type drum pattern. So, and I love that too. I mean, I don't need things to be complicated and worry where one is all the time. I'm not that kind of a guy. I want something to really feel good, first of all. And secondly, I'm not interested in these ridiculously complicated melody lines. I mean, I appreciate them, but that's not who I am. I don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like I'm having my teeth drilled when I'm listening to somebody like that. You know what I mean? So I realized I wanted simplicity in my melodies that I was writing, but I love harmony. So I figured underneath it, you can get kind of sophisticated. You know what I mean? You can reharm so much, and generally people don't always hear harmony. Yeah. They hear melody and they hear groove. Yeah. So I figured that's where I can really stretch out. You know what I mean? And that's kind of been my MO for my entire career. It's been about simplistic melody with really kind of sophisticated harmony.
Yeah. My toes are slightly curling, and you say that because it makes so much sense. I've just sent a demo of one of my things. It's like a twisted, slow blues thing, crazy harmony. And there's a guy called Malford Milligan who's a Texas singer. He's one of my favorite singers. He's on that Eric Johnson Live from Austin City Limits, and he was in a band Storyville, which was a fantastic Texan blues rock band with Stevie Ray Vaughan's rhythm section. And I did my buddy who played drums when I was with Van Morrison is playing drums on it. I'm waiting for him to come back to me with the first version of the drums. And I wanted to I needed to put placeholder guitar solos in there. And I listened back having sent it, and it was like everything I know. It had like a little intro solo, a middle solo, and an outro solo, just because it does.
Yeah.
I had everything that I know in that 6 minutes or whatever it is, like everything. And I'm feeling more ashamed now. But even when I listened to it, maybe you should have come up for air now and again and made it sound more like an Albert King record just for a bit,
Yeah.
So it's that thing. I mean,
I think you got to be really honest with yourself after you've recorded something like that, and say to yourself, "Is that what the song needed?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Am I trying to prove something here?
Yeah.
Or is it something?" What are other people going to think when they hear it? I think you've just got to kind of be honest about I think mostly what the song needs. I mean, for me, it's all about the song. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore because I've made too many records to repeat my licks. It's what the song needs. I'm going to give it now. If that means not playing guitar at all, I'll give it that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, I have the opportunity to think like that. When you're not doing it full time, you tend to take advantage of those opportunities and go, I've got to put my licks in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very human.
Yeah. Well, that is exactly what's going on, because this is finally going to be my first record, and it's like a statement of what I do. That's exactly it. It's like it's like wanting to prove I've done tons of transcribing, I've practiced my ass off.
Yeah,
this is what you're going to get. But yeah, I'm going to revisit that, and definitely inspired by this discussion too. So when it comes back to me, before I send the version from Malford, I'll take about 2,000 notes off it. See thanks for the heads up. Yeah. So I want to talk gear, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All of the sounds are killing, and I'm obsessing slightly. I'm looking at a tune called "Ain't Mad at Ya" from Groovalicious.
Oh, that's an old record.
Like a great rhythm guitar sound on that. So like your core lead guitar sound, your sort of what I would call a jazz sound, is so deep. And I know you've got some lovely guitars, but it's in your approach and it's in your hands. But
yeah,
if we talk about rhythm guitar for a minute,
Yeah.
What have you gathered tons of amps around there?
No,
You haven't gone down that road? Because
no.
those sounds are posh. They're
I've
really
actually,
great sounds.
Andy, I've got an embarrassingly small amount of gear that I own.
Right.
I mean, mainly because I don't want my house to have no space, you know. but also, you know, if I'm recording rhythm guitar things, I tend to go into the board and just use plugins.
Okay.
And I'm not even that fussy about what plugin I use. I mean,
You're
it's
playing to the sound, then, aren't you? This goes back
yeah,
to the
that's
treble
it.
pickup on a telly. You're playing to the sound. That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, if I mean, I'm fully aware that if a certain groove calls for a certain guitar tone, I'll try and get to that. But I don't have a mini guitar. I don't have Les Pauls. I don't have 335s anymore.
Right.
So I've generally got a couple of guitars that with different pickup settings and a couple of different amps and EQ settings and effects.
Yeah.
So that's it, and the rest I've got to just make happen somehow. You know.
Yeah, right. I guess listening to you sell, it seems to me knowing what you want it to sound like is probably as important as having tons of gear, because you know what you want, don't you?
I think if there's one thing I've really got good at and better at producing is knowing what something needs immediately. I'm generally not doing too much experimentation. It's kind of obvious what something needs usually, and if I record it and it does really sound good, I'm going to commit to it instantly. I'm not going, oh, that sounds good, let's try this idea now. Yeah, right. Not doing it. I'm committing right away, and I'm pretty fast at finishing up ideas once I've got the germ of the thing in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's, I think, just comes from doing it for a long time. You know.
Yeah.
What the hard bit is that grabbing that little bit of inspiration to write something. Yeah. That's the tough bit. But once I've got a germ of an idea, or even just a basic melody, I'm off to the races. You know, I know how to craft the rest of the song pretty quickly. Right. I mean, sometimes I'll get to the end of it and go, that sounds a bit pedantic, you know, and I'll do over. You know what I mean? Yeah. But for the most part, I'll commit early on and, you know, do it like that.
Yeah. Well, that was a surprise to me that you're using plugins for that sound. What do you use for your lead guitar sound, your jazz guitar sound?
Well, I've basically got one guitar I play now, because I'm not really interested in playing other guitars to sound like me, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And here at my studio, I play through an acoustic image, Claris 2R. Right. It's quite an old one. Right. And I've got two Razor's Edge 12-inch speaker cabinets, right, which I'm not crazy about, but they record nicely. Right. I don't particularly like them for live, but for local gigs, I will take them because I'm tired of breaking my back, and they're light. Yeah, they sound good. I mean, they do sound good. Yeah. But Pat Martino showed me that he would play a Claris 2R, just like the one I have, right, with a Marshall 4x12 cabinet. Right. And it was fantastic. I did that a few times at some festivals. Yeah. And it was just wonderful. Yeah. I totally got why he did that, you know. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't think that would be a good jazz guitar tone at all, but it was just, you know, he plays hard, and I tend to do that too a little bit, you know, and it just cuts through those speaker cabinets, really cut through. Yeah. I don't have one here. I'm not interested in having one here, but yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, I don't record DI when I play my jazz guitar. Yeah. I've got other amps too. I've got a couple of polytones which sound nice, but you know, they're just a little bit noisy, and I like things to be quiet, you know. Yeah. So I tend to use the acoustic image. It's great every time, easy.
And how long have you been using that amp, would you say?
15 years.
Right. Right.
Well, at least 10, 12. Yeah. You know, long time.
Amazing, really amazing.
Yeah.
Why did you stop doing that fantastic um, guitar broadcast thing you used to do? I loved that.
The inside track.
Yeah, I loved it.
Well, I mean, I can be really honest with you. We did 20 episodes over
Right.
3 years,
Yeah.
and I was running out of people to call.
Right.
Which I'm sure doing what you do, you totally know what I'm talking about. I mean, you know, I was at the point where if I wanted somebody, I would have to track down John Mayer or something, or Peter Frampton, for instance. You know what I mean? I know you've interviewed him. And it was just, I just thought, you know, do I want to keep going down this road? It's starting to feel a little bit like work on the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'd done 20 episodes, and I think, and it was a bit of a labor of love. You know what I mean? There wasn't really any money. I think we made up. I had a membership program at the time, so I don't think I lost money, but I certainly didn't make any. And I just thought it'd be nice to have some funding and step it up. And that wasn't really going to be possible when you're talking about interviewing jazz guys. You know what I mean? And I gave up pretty quick, and I was quite happy about it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Some great.
I mean, in a way, I miss it because it's a fun format. But it was, I think what you're doing is a little easier on people because it's just a conversation. Whereas when I was doing it, you know, they were bringing bands into the studio, and we were filming that too. So there's a lot to get somebody to agree to, and especially if you've got somebody signed to a record deal, they might not be allowed to do something like that. You know what I mean? Unless they're signed up. I mean, there's too many steps that you've got to go through. And it just became a bit of a pain, you know.
Well, it's a shame for all the rest of us, but I guess
Right.
Yeah. Like Mike Miller is a great player, for instance. A lot of people
know
him over here.
Yeah, he's great.
Great player. And some great rhythm section players. Jeff Tane Watts.
Sure. Yeah, he did it, didn't he?
Player.
Yeah. Abel Boreal came in.
Everybody, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. You should release that.
Yeah.
Sell them as like one-off things, you know. I mean, it's hell of a resource you got there. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
The TV program.
Well, that's what we wanted to do, you know.
Yeah.
But we wanted funding, and you know, I just didn't see it through. I just needed some help. You know what I mean? I had enough going on. Apart from that,
making music on you, so
yeah.
I get it. And it's about that was about other people's music when you're as busy as you are.
That's right.
It's easy to let things get in the way. I mean, I've had that experience already with this limited amount of experience. But yeah. So what's on the shopping list of skills to learn, music to check out, different stuff to explore? You've taken on the orchestral thing, nailed that. What's next? Anything else? Anything?
Well, I've got a new record I'm finishing up.
Oh, great.
It's I booked a studio week after next. Chris Coleman's coming in to play drums.
Yeah.
He's pretty ridiculous. So I'll be finishing that up probably October. And we'll be touring and releasing that record all next year. So I'm going to have a hell of a year next year.
Right.
And of course, I'm getting married in.
Oh yeah, I meant to say congratulations.
Yeah. So that's all a bit new, isn't it?
Yeah. Good for you. Making an honest man of you, isn't that?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've waited this long to do it, so it's pretty great.
Do it right, so they're good for you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I took a long time to do it, but yeah, I haven't looked back for a minute since. So I'm
well, you got it right. You guys.
I definitely did. I'm very lucky. My greatest teacher. She sings all my themes. We write music together. She's just everything. She's amazing, and she's got much better taste than I have, and really bounce things off her. I mean, you know.
No, it's wonderful.
Arranging solos. Yeah, I don't want her to be held responsible for the lack of taste in my solos, because I do. She does tell me. Again, she gives me a grown-up perspective on things. I just don't sometimes. Or often I don't go with that. inspired by this discussion, I think I'm going to be making a few changes there. We'll have to play sometime, by the way.
Yeah.
Over. I mean, I've got this college teaching gig. Come and do a workshop. I think we briefly mentioned that before. Come and do it. Jeff Gascoigne teaches this place.
Oh, does he? Where is it?
It's by Southwark Station. It's called LCCM, rather. London College of Creative Music. Come and do something. We'll play together.
Yeah. What would we do? What the hell would I talk about? I have no idea what.
Exactly what we just, your thing, what you do, music, how you put things together, you know.
Well, we could do that.
Play some tunes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. That might be fun.
Let's definitely do it. So if you're thinking anything you might have an afternoon or a morning free, we'll do it, you know.
All right. Okay.
All right, man, I'll let you crack on. But listen, thanks so much for taking the time. And again, congratulations. Patti said to say congratulations to you.
No, thank you. So, yeah, give her my love.
We'll meet your missus to be at some point, I'm sure.
Yes, yes, you will.
All right, man, I'll let you get back to it. But thanks for taking the time.
Right.
I've really enjoyed checking this stuff out. It's an education, and those records, the playing's great, the sound great, the tunes are, it's just so lovely. It's great.
Oh, thanks, matey. I'm very flattered.
All right, man, I'll see you soon.
All right, mate.
Thanks, mate. See you later. Ta-da. Bye.